Stargirl, episode 8. It's your boy Icon, starting off another week of superhero television. And for this particular episode, because they're calling all of them Summer School, we will call this episode Mind Games. And mind games were definitely played here. But before we get into those mind games, let me just touch base with the Courtney-Yolanda situation. Because in the last episode, Yolanda, she went crazy under the influence of Eclipso, and she quit the team. And I was the one who was making fun of her because I'm the one that said, Yolanda's sitting here talking about like, oh, it's your fault, Courtney. I wanted to be left alone, and then you gave me the suit, and then she quit the JSA. But I was the one who said, I was like, yeah, you quit the JSA and told Courtney to kick rocks, but you ain't give that damn suit back. And apparently she heard me because the first thing that happened in this episode, Courtney got a ring at the doorbell. When she opened the door, it was a gym bag on the floor, and Yolanda gave back the suit. So, oops, my bad. So that kind of crushed Courtney. She even talked to the staff, and she told the staff that she was his friend, and she was trying to get the staff back online. But this episode was more about. It was actually about. I thought it was going to be more about Rick, and then we got a surprise at the end. But to talk about Rick for a second. Rick, in the beginning of the episode, he got a visit from the teacher that accused him of cheating on that particular test. The teacher went to his house not only to apologize, but to offer him some brochures and some information about financial aid regarding him going to college. Because, she told him that college is a good place for him to discover who he wants to be when other people have doubted him, and written him off. So, and Rick was actually very receptive, because Rick usually has like an attitude problem, but he was very receptive of the teacher. He even took the information. But then his douchebag uncle showed up, and I forgot about him. His douchebag uncle showed up, and then he was just like, who are you lady to get off my property? And then he took like the brochures that she gave him, and he threw them up into the air and scattered them all over the place. And then he told Rick, he was like, you gonna end up in jail before you end up in college. And I'm like, how? Isn't Rick like damn near 18? Like Rick's gonna graduate pretty soon, But it was just them reminding us what a douchebag like the uncle is. So we we'll get to that later. So then so Rick goes to the forest, and he goes and sits and he talks with Grundy. And he told Grundy about a story that, about his old uncle, where his uncle like abused the dog, and then he took the dog and brought the dog to someplace better. And then when he went to go visit the dog wasn't vicious anymore. The dog was more timid and more loving because it got surrounded by people that loved him and gave him a chance. So he figured with Grundy, he was just like, okay, so he's like, maybe you just need a home and for somebody to care about you. So him and Grundy kind of like bonded a little bit. Grundy even shared his food that he shared with him first. And the two of them are making some sort of connection and like making new ground. Now, because of the influence of Eclipso, there was a moment where he made Rick see this vision of these fishermen. They were walking through or these hunters. They were walking through the forest. And then Rick had heard on the news, there was a report, because he was driving his car, he heard a report that there was like a bear that was in the forest, and the bear had attacked like a little girl, and everybody is going to get together for a manhunt to try to find this bear, and when they see the bear, they're going to shoot the bear and kill the bear on sight. Now, obviously, Rick's like, they're not talking about a bear, they're talking about Grundy. So Rick goes back to the forest, he tries to find Grundy, and then he couldn't find Grundy, and he's running around trying to find Grundy. He actually called Pat, which was surprising, because when Pat and Courtney were together, he called Pat and he told Pat, he was like, yo, Grundy needs our help. And if I'm Pat, the first thing I would have said was, you mean you need our help to beat Grundy? but apparently like during the commercial break, Rick told them the whole thing about how he was feeding Grundy and how he was taking care of him, because Courtney was talking to Pat about that, and she was just like, oh, how could he keep such a secret from us? And I'm like, girl, you've been keeping secrets since the season finale of last year. So so Pat and Courtney, like, they go down to try to like find Rick and try to help Rick, quote unquote help Rick with Grundy. So Rick goes down, he finds Grundy, and when he now keep in mind, this is all an illusion created by Eclipso. He finds Grundy down by the pond. When he finds Grundy, he sees the body of a dead little girl, and he sees literally blood all over Grundy's hands. So then Rick just kind of like snaps and gives into like his anger and fear, and he's like, why did you kill the girl? And then like Grundy was like, no, and then Grundy ran off, and then Rick went chasing after him, and he was just like, yo, I'll kill you. And then but it was funny that Rick said that, because Rick was there to protect him from people who wanted to kill him. And then when Pat and Courtney got to the forest, they were walking around, and they were just like, yo, what happened to the hunters? I thought he said they were hunters and people looking, trying to kill Grundy. So they're confused. So Rick runs, he chases Grundy throughout the forest, and then they wind up in like some open farm field. When they got to the farm, the first thing that popped in my mind was like, so this farm actually looks kind of familiar, but it didn't really dawn on me yet where I saw the farm from. So then Rick just decided he's had enough, and he was like, "You're a monster. You killed the little girl. You gotta pay." And then he goes and he proceeds to beat the ever-loving hell out of Solomon Grundy. He even used his dad's hourglass. He used the hourglass. He flipped it over. He got super strength for an hour, and he used that super strength to beat the living tar out of Grundy. And then when he was beating on him, that's when it hit me. I was like, wait a minute, isn't that Rick's front yard? Because I remember it from earlier in the episode. Courtney and Pat show up, and then, when Courtney and Pat were looking at him, Pat said out loud, he was like, what are you doing? That's not Grundy. And then as soon as Pat said that wasn't Grundy, I was like, oh crap, he's beating up his uncle. and yeah, lo and behold, Courtney ended up using the cosmic staff, which she named Cosmo, which Pat had a problem with that. And that was actually a funny scene, because she was just like, he was like, you name the staff Cosmo, and she was like, well, you name your robot Stripe, but he's like, first of all, you name the robot Stripe. But she used the staff to blast Rick, and then the blast actually knocked Rick back to normal. And then when Rick finally came to his senses, he looked and saw that he had literally just beat the living hell out of his uncle. Honestly, I wasn't upset about that. I'm gonna be real with you. I mean, I didn't want, obviously you don't want the man to die, but the way he was acting in season 1, the way he acted in this particular episode, is like the fact that Rick finally beat the tar out of him. Like, I didn't shed any tears for that. And here's the part that shocked me, because I thought they were going to try to do something to like cover it up and like fix the situation. They actually didn't do anything to cover up the situation, and Rick went to jail. Like, Rick straight up went to jail. So I guess his uncle was right. He ended up going to prison before he went to college. And I'm just like, I don't know, something has to be done about that, because I don't know if his uncle wasn't like physically abusive towards him, but I don't know. It was just weird. Like, it's like, I get it, but at the same time, it was just like Rick didn't deserve to go to jail for that. And then, which is why I'm surprised that Pat and Courtney even called the police, or maybe they called the ambulance and the ambulance called the police instead. But I don't know. I just feel like there were different ways they could have spun that to keep Rick out of prison. But Rick's obviously going to prison for a reason, because again, we're doing the whole divide and conquer. And regarding the divide and conquer, because again, like Yolanda gave back the cat suit. And once Rick came to his senses and realized that he actually like beat up his uncle, he got so mad at himself, he took off the hourglass and shattered it into a million pieces. So bye-bye, Hour Man. We don't have him either. And Courtney looked devastated like when he destroyed the hourglass. But, but now he doesn't have his hourglass power, and now he's going to prison. And, Grundy watched him get arrested, and then he was like, oh, friend. Which means Grundy's going to break Rick out of jail at some point, I guess, when we get to the season finale and we need his help or whatever. Like, something going to happen, he's going to bring him out of jail. So that was it for Rick, and cross that bad boy off the list. Beth, she was having a conversation with her parents, where her parents tried to talk to her about their divorce. And I thought this was a very nice scene. It was very warm. It was very tender. And then as soon as her parents, because Beth had asked her parents, she was like, how come you guys are getting a divorce? Or like, what happened or whatever. They, they told the story. They were just like, when we first met, we were in love. We did everything together. Like, we were thick as thieves, blah, blah, blah. And then Beth was like, what happened? And then the mom said, well, we had you. And as soon as she said that, because I was like, no parent would ever say that. Like, they literally said, once we had you, we stopped, being involved with each other. We fell out of love with each other because we focused all our attention on you. They flat out told Beth that she ruined their marriage. And when her mom said that, I was like, this is Eclipso. I was like, this is Eclipso. And, I think Beth saw Eclipso like in the soup or something. Something happened where she saw Eclipso, where she heard Eclipso, and then she freaked out, dropped the sandwich on the table, and then she ran. She went to Courtney's house, and then she tried to ask Courtney for help, but obviously nobody was home because they were all out helping Rick. See, but then Barbara would have been home and Mike would have been home. So that should have told Beth. See, And I give Beth all the props in the world. Thought I'd never say that. I give Beth all the props in the world for what happened after the fact, but I do feel like it took her way too long to get there because Beth's smart enough to know when she got to the house, the fact that nobody was in the house should have said something to her. When she got into the house and she saw a little boy sitting on the front steps, that should have said something to her. And then she had a flat out conversation with the boy where the boy kept referring to her as you people, and because this was a child, because this was like an 8-10-year-old child, when I first watched the episode, the fact that he kept referring to her as you people, it didn't hit me because, again, this is a child. But then when Beth figured out, like, oh my God, you're Eclipso, and then he started going in with the whole, you're the wrong color, you're the wrong, like gender, you don't belong in a team, you weren't chosen, Yolanda was chosen by Courtney, the staff chose Courtney, Rick's dad chose him, nobody chose you. And then he looked at her and then he was just like, oh, I thought you people were supposed to be athletic. Yo, I died. Like when he said that, and I feel so, and then Beth flat out called him a racist. I feel very bad for that kid who had to play that scene because it must have been uncomfortable as hell for him to have to say that. Or maybe because he's a kid, he didn't really know what he was saying, and to him it didn't mean nothing. But if he's fully aware of the words that were coming out of his mouth, much props for that kid, because I was like, damn, like Beth wasn't having it either. And then, he tried to play on her fear as well. He tried to play on the fact that, like, oh, you're a loser, you're nobody, like you're larger than the other team, than the other members of the team. Like, you're not athletic, you're a woman, you're black, you're this, you're that. Like, he threw every stereotype and racist, racist jab he could possibly throw at her. And then he told her flat out, like, she doesn't belong. And then, like, in the end, in the end, it was the racism that actually kept Beth from spiraling into his web, because the difference is Yolanda fell for his tricks because the situation that was presented to Yolanda about Brainwave and everything, that was something that she could believe, that Brainwave put some of his mind into her mind, which is why she's seeing all these things. You can get behind that. You can legitimately believe that. Rick thinking that Grundy accidentally killed a little girl, and then him trying to kill Grundy to put Grundy out of his misery, you can believe that. Like, that's something that's actually believable. Eclipso trying to play the race card on Beth did not work because again, he comes from an older time. So times have changed. And Beth is full aware of the fact that times have changed. So once he starts saying all the stuff out of his mouth, you're not going to fall for that. And then you're going to be like, yo, bro, hold up. So Beth was, out of all the members of the JSA, Beth was the, surprise, Beth was the one person who didn't fall for the okie doke. And then Beth flat out told him, she was like, yo, first of all, she was just like, I love being a woman. I love being who I am. I love my size. and then she snatched the goggles, because he had taken the goggles from her. She snatched the goggles out of his hands, and she was like, most of all, I love being black, bitch. And then she put the goggles on, and then the goggles actually made the illusion go away, and then Eclipso disappeared. And then as soon as she put the goggles on, like, Dr. Mid-Nite came back, and he was like, yo, I saw the whole thing. I witnessed the whole thing. He said, keep the goggles on and don't take the goggles off, because the goggles actually see past his illusions. So now not only was Beth the only person strong enough to resist the mind prison, but now she has a way to counteract it. So Beth is the key to taking down Eclipso, in my opinion. And kudos to Beth, because she deserves a win after being put in that god-awful costume for the last 2 seasons. And then in the end, they did a scene, they actually did a scene where Barbara and Mike were at the house or whatever, and they were talking about the whole thing with Rick and everything, and the two of them were just like, oh, Mike was like, what are we going to do? And then Barbara was like, we're going to support them, and we're going to be there for them the best way that we can. And then she was just like, oh, give me a hug. And he was just like, you got it, Mom. And then he called her Mom, and I was like, oh, God, it's Eclipso again. And then they showed Eclipso outside of their house. So in the next episode, Eclipso is going to target Barbara and Mike. And I know for a fact Mike isn't strong enough to handle whatever Eclipso is going to put him through. So this will be a doozy, and I'm actually interested in that because I want to see, because I like the fact that he's not just going after the main cast members. I like the fact that he's actually going after everybody as a whole. He's going after the family. So to see Barbara actually have a moment where she's going to freak out along with Mike, I think will be very cool. So that was it. And thank you for tuning in. One thing that was weird to me, though, Pat told everybody in the beginning what Eclipso was going to do, and yet they still fell for it. But anyway, leave your comments, questions, and or concerns down below. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on Instagram. Always hit me up on YouTube, where we can go back and forth and share our thoughts about these superhero shows, whether good or bad. Like I said, if you hated it, tell me that you hated it. If you loved it, tell me that you loved it. If you like the show but have some issues with certain things, share those as well. Like I said, we'll always go back and talk about it. A lot of, like I go back and forth with some great people, like Impact Fan for Life. Like, we always go back and forth about certain things that we both like and dislike, and Jess and King as well, especially when it comes to Stargirl and when it used to come in that Black Lightning. So like I said, guys, thank you for tuning in. Hit the notification bell so you'll get notified when my other videos pop up, because we got Supergirl coming up pretty soon, we got Doom Patrol, we got Titans, and then we still got Marvel's What If. So thanks for tuning in, guys. So until next time, until we see some more mind control in action, take care, and about this.